your full name for the court's record?
It's Zach Crawford.
Okay, let's talk about yourself for a few minutes. Where are you currently employed?
Currently employed at the Chattanooga Police Department.
And how long have you been at the police department?
I started with Chattanooga Police Department in the year 2013.
And when you started in 2013, what position were you in?
At first, I was hired on as a police cadet, where I went through approximately 6 months of training before moving on to a field training program. And then after graduating the field training program, I was employed as a patrol officer at the city of Chattanooga.
And how long were you a patrol officer at the Chattanooga Police Department?
Just a little over 3 years.
And after your 3 years in patrol, what did you do next?
I applied for a position within the major crimes unit, specifically for a homicide position. Through the interview process, I was selected and began training with the homicide unit.
All right, so you've been with the homicide division for how long?
Since 2017.
So, gosh, it's already 2025, so roughly
About 7.5 years.
You're going on your 8th year?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I want to talk to you a little bit about the way that the Chattanooga Police Department works. Do you know roughly how many people work for the Chattanooga Police Department?
The number fluctuates. I think we're somewhere around 427 employees.
Would that be sworn law enforcement
That's correct.
officers? You're not talking about like support staff, you mean sworn officers?
Yes.
Okay, and is the department divided into certain departments or divisions?
Yes.
Will you explain to them how that works?
Yes, so we have multi-tiers within the Chattanooga Police Department. The first line, obviously, is our patrol units, which make up the neighborhood policing. They have 3 different sectors across the city. They're broken into smaller areas to include districts. I think at early testimony you talked about districts. Specifically, in this incident, was mainly in the area of Alpha North. Inside of Alpha North, there are 5 districts. So there's lots of districts throughout the city. So you have neighborhood policing. The other branch of it, you have community policing. You do community events, engagements. You also have special events. You have 2 different branches of the investigating unit. You have organized crime and you have violent crime. I'm assigned to the Violent Crimes Bureau, and that makes up crimes unit, the homicide unit, fugitive, and organized crime has anywhere from our gun team to traffic and some other things along these lines. Besides that, we have internal affairs, and we have multiple other avenues such as recruiting. There's different branches within the police department.
What about property? Where does property fall?
The property division.
Yes, sir.
The property division is located at the Chattanooga Police Department at one of our annex buildings. And all of our property technicians are sworn civilians. They do have a sworn supervisor, a sergeant, so a police officer that oversees the property division at the Chattanooga Police Department.
What you heard Officer Pierre testify, but what typically would patrol, at what point as a patrol officer are you instructed to call someone else?
We have different SOPs or
What's an SOP?
standard operating procedures for different things. One of those is investigations. So depending on what you respond to, what criteria it meets, you would notify the responsible investigator that would potentially respond to that. So any crime that or incident that potentially would require lengthy follow-up, obviously a patrol officer is kind of kept to a specific shift, where that shift is then rotated throughout the week. Obviously they don't have the ability to follow up extensively based on their call load in terms of how many calls are coming out in their districts and their areas that follow up on those things. So that's why they would call an investigator out. And that investigator will then conduct a follow-up, whether it's during normal business hours, during after hours. As an investigator, there's many times that we're on call. I know as a homicide unit, we're essentially on call 24/7.
So when a homicide happens, homicide investigators to be called, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, is there a missing persons division?
There is a missing person.
What does that fall under?
That falls under the investigations too. It falls under missing persons, special victims unit, which works primarily children and domestic violence cases. Those teammates work together out of the Family Justice Center.
And then what about crime scene?
Crime scene works under the Violent Crimes Bureau, which is directly involved with the same unit as me. It's the Homicide unit. And crime scene, their responsibilities are based on the needs of investigations. So crime scene will never actively go do something without the request of an investigative unit to respond. So certain incidents, whether it be a shooting, they would respond to collect, document evidence on scene and process that evidence, typically by direction of a lead investigator of some sort.
Do you know how many missing persons investigators there are at the police department?
There's approximately 4.
Do you know how many, 4 missing persons? Do you know how many homicide investigators there are?
Currently, we have 10 homicide investigators.
Would that number have been similar in 2022, or do you recall how many?
Due to the nature of the job in the homicide unit, we have a high turnover rate throughout the years. It has changed, but for a while there, we would have some investigators that wouldn't last more than 2 to 3 years based on the type of incidents that we worked. At the time, I believe it was approximately around 9 or 10.
Okay. And do you know approximately how many investigators are in the crime scene unit?
Approximately 10. The crime scene unit's a little bit different makeup. Approximately 7.5 years ago, we brought civilian crime scene investigators to the Chattanooga Police Department. And we've slowly transitioned into filling those spots with civilian crime scene technicians. We do have, at this point, I believe, 5 sworn law enforcement crime scene investigators, and the rest are made up by civilian employees.
How many major homicides would you say you've worked? I won't say major, all homicides are major, I apologize. How many homicides would you say you've worked?
As a lead investigator, approximately 26, 27. In terms of how we work investigations, we work as a team within our homicide unit. We try to conduct the best investigation we can. So we assist with pretty much any homicide that happens. So as collectively, with me being there 7.5 years, I've been the lead or assisted with approximately 200 homicide investigations.
How do you become the lead on a homicide investigation?
We have a homicide rotation. We have an on-call schedule that will fill in the gaps of outside of business hours. So I hate to say that we have business hours because we do have based on the nature of the job, but for scheduling purposes, we have an 8 to 4 schedule. From 4 p.m. until 8 a.m. the next day, we have on-call investigators that take the evening shift calls as they come in. And we also have investigators that fill the day shift because we're not sitting around the office doing nothing. So you know which days, if something were to come out, you need the investigator to respond to. So we have a normal on-call schedule in terms of daily calls that come out because we don't just work homicides. We work life-threatening assaults where the possibility of death could occur. We work DOAs, which are death upon arrival, or death investigations, essentially that are unknown cause or suspicious in nature. So natural cases we typically don't come out to, such as a heart attack, someone who's 80-something years old, that has maybe extensive medical history. A lot of times we refer to call about those, but we don't respond to those. But any type of shooting, we also respond to as well. That meets our nexus. But any homicide we come out to. We also come out to we work kidnappings, and we also assist with other investigations that potentially have a nexus to the homicide unit. There may be suspicious circumstances around it, whether it be a kidnapping, a missing persons, or potentially a robbery.
Were you and are you the lead investigator in the case of Jasmine Pace?
Yes, I was assigned as the investigator on the case.
From the time that you got involved, let's just say in days after Jasmine's body was located, how many different people in the Chattanooga Police Department would have been involved in an investigation of that scale?
In this investigation, in the disappearance and homicide of Jasmine Pace, our entire homicide unit, practically our entire crime scene unit, fugitive investigators were involved. We also had academy class that was active at the time that was going through to become police officers. They assisted with area searches. I requested for our drone team that worked out of the traffic unit at the time to assist in the investigation for scoping further areas. We attempted to employ canines. We reached out to other jurisdictions. We had federal partners, such as the federal marshals, the FBI, also involved. Anything we could do potentially to get answers for the family, we reached out and did.
Can you describe for the jury your initial involvement, including when you first heard the name Jasmine Pace?
Yes. On Sunday, November 27th, 2022, I was actually at home. I wasn't necessarily on call. Like I said, that's a very loose term with our unit. I was at home with my kids. My wife was at work. Detective Siege texted me and asked if I had seen any of the Facebook posts that had been on the internet about the disappearance of Jasmine Pace. I said I had not. He referred me to Facebook, and I actively searched Facebook to look into what he was referring to at that time. I started then reading the Facebook posts by some of the family and friends of Jasmine Pace about what they had potentially discovered at that time and what they had actually posted on the internet. I had a discussion with Detective Siege that we'd be potentially looking into that case based on some suspicious circumstances around her disappearance. I was actually actively looking for childcare at that time to potentially come in and see if I could assist with the investigation. And at approximately 6 p.m. that evening, I was actually called by my supervisor. So approximately about 30 minutes after Detective Siege starts the conversation about it, I was called by my supervisor about the same case, which then I turned found child care and came in to assist.
So at the time that you first learned about it, you had not heard from any missing person investigator at the Chattanooga Police Department?
No, I had not.
Are you now aware that they knew about it, they just did not contact anybody from the CPD Homicide Division?
Correct. I didn't find out directly that missing persons was involved until I spoke with my supervisor, Sergeant Emery, who's Lieutenant Emery.
And when you began your involvement, did you initially meet with Jasmine's family?
My first involvement actually called Detective Siege and requested him come in. I was advised at the time of initial response. I was going to respond to the Police Service Center to speak with Investigator Chen about his findings in the investigation to see how we could assist and potentially lend our expertise in the matter on how we could potentially help them locate Jasmine Pace and also potentially go over the details to see if there was anything that was suspicious at the time that potentially could link to something else. So I notified Detective Siege. Lieutenant Emery advised he would be responding as well. I knew that I was going to talk to Investigator Chen. Once I responded that evening, just after 7 p.m. To our police station, I was then greeted by Investigator Chen, which I had a short conversation about what he had found at that time, because there wasn't much that had been done at that point. And he notified me that the victim's family would be at the police station at around 7:30 p.m., which then I decided to further wait on details till we spoke further with the victim's family.
Did you speak with the victim's family?
I did.
And based on that conversation, did you become aware of Jason Chen?
Yes, I did.
And what was your basis of knowledge as to who Jason Chen was and how he was related to the investigation at that point?
At that point, at the beginning stages of speaking with Investigator Chen, reading the Facebook post, and also speaking with the victim's family, I realized that Jason Chen was a potential significant other, whether it was dating or some sort of other type of relationship where they would meet up. I didn't know the exact circumstances other than that they had been talking and seeing each other for a few months. At that point, I did learn that he had not reached out to Investigator Tomlin and the potential, missing person of his significant other.
But Investigator Tomlin was not able to give you very much information, is that correct?
No, he was not.
Did Investigator Blunt ever give you any information?
I never talked to Investigator Blunt due to her not responding and not assisting with the investigation.
Based on information that you received from Jasmine's family, did the Homicide Division seek a search warrant for Jason Chen's apartment?
Yes, we did.
And was that search warrant issued?
It was.
And were you present when the search warrant was executed at Jason Chen's apartment?
Yes, I was.
All right, I'm going to start. Can you flip the backlights off for me, deputies? By having you turn onto this screen, and we're going to switch screens in a second. But let me ask you this. At 110 Tremont, and the jury's now heard this address many times, are you familiar with North Chattanooga?
Yes, I am.
How long have you lived in Chattanooga?
Almost my entire life, other than a few years I spent in the military, and a year and a half I lived in Illinois with my wife.
Okay. So were you familiar also with Tremont Road, Tremont Street as well before this investigation began?
Yes, I was.
Okay. All right. Let's see. You recognize this building?
Yes,
And this is the Tremont Apartments at 110 Tremont Street. Is that correct?
that's correct.
Okay. So I want you to describe here sort of the layout of the building and the surroundings of the building based on your investigation into Mr. Chen's apartment. If you don't mind, just sort of walk the jury through what we're looking at, what's on the left side, what's on the right side.
Just for, I'll just describe, so this is going to be the actual front of the Tremont Loft Apartments at 110 Tremont Street. The door you see here at the bottom is going to be the main entrance. There's actually a keypad right here, which is the main access into the building. There are 3 separate other exits, the way that they're designed. This would actually be from looking on the left side over here where the cars are direction towards would be north. So the road runs north and south. So this would actually be the west side of the building. On the right side over here on the picture is going to be the south side of the building. There's a parking lot. There's a parking lot area, as you can see, that buds up to the side of the apartment complex. And there's it's hard to tell from the picture, but there's a ramp here to an exit as well. On the north side of the apartment complex, it's very similar setup with just a little bit smaller parking space. Essentially, you have a few parking spots just around this corner. There's another exit as well. On the back side of the apartments, there's also one more additional exit. But that parking is for an additional location and not those apartments itself. Specifically, this apartment complex we refer to as the North Shore area. If you're not familiar with Chattanooga, it's historically been called the North Shore area. Essentially, we have the Tennessee River that runs through downtown. And the main part of downtown Chattanooga is on the south side of the river. And this smaller community on the north side of it is essentially the North Shore area. This is actually fairly closely located to Coolidge Park, which is right across the road from it.
And Investigator Crawford, over here, I'm shining this little red light. What is this?
That's going to be a dumpster enclosure. At the time that we first served the search warrant, there was 2 blue, large-sized dumpsters that were located inside there.
Did the police department investigate those dumpsters?
We did.
Okay. And looking back at this building, can you help the jury understand where in the building Mr. Chen's apartment was?
Correct. By looking at this, it would actually be on the right side. He was a few apartments deep into the apartment complex, about a third of the way up on the right side. He actually has he has a opening. I would hate to say it's a balcony because all it is a metal bars and the sliding glass door opens. So it's not anywhere you can walk out to, but essentially you can open it to have, window access or, air to come in. Just past the walkway exit, the ramp there that I showed before, his apartment, if you're looking at it on the second floor, just to the right.
Okay. Is this location that you're looking at, is it in Hamilton County, Tennessee?
It is.
In the city of Chattanooga, is that correct?
Yes.
So you were present. Well, let me ask you one more question about this front door. I think that we can see, but you agree that those are stairs going down to that front door right there?
That's correct.
Okay. You testified that you were present when the search warrant was executed at Jason's apartment. Is that correct?
Yes, I was.
Do you recall what time, what day, first of all, what day that search warrant was executed?
Yes, we obtained the search warrant. Detective Seach actually did obtain the search warrant while still speaking with the victim's family at that time. He notified me that he had a signed search warrant for the apartment 210 of Jason Chen's. He subsequently notified me. I subsequently notified crime scene, and we needed to respond after we executed the search warrant. Like I testified earlier, approximately half of our crime scene investigators are not sworn employees, so they do not have the ability to carry protection, such as firearms. So typical protocol would be that either investigators or patrol officers that have extra layers of protection, potentially on a search warrant, could be high-level risk at any time, not knowing if it's occupied at that time or unoccupied. We had officers respond to the area for two reasons: to help with the execution of the search warrant, to assist with safety, and the second part is Officer Clemens is the courtesy officer at these apartments. He doesn't reside in these apartments. He lives at a separate apartment complex that he oversees several apartments, and a courtesy officer is essentially their responsibility to follow up on disturbances after hours, potentially help lock things up, do those types of things. He had a master key, which will allow us not to force entry into the apartment. So upon Officer Clemens' arrival, we were able to further execute that search warrant with a master key that allowed us in apartment 210. At approximately 23:45 hours, which is 11:45 p.m. on the 27th of November of 2022, the search warrant was executed upon entering the apartment.
And I'm assuming that you have been involved in the execution of dozens, if not hundreds of search warrants, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
In a situation such as this, would you knock first?
In this specific incident, we did, because we don't do no-knock warrants in the homicide unit, and there's also safety skills that we have to abide by in terms of when executing a warrant that reaches a certain level. Then we have our SWAT unit serve those search warrants. We do knock, one, to make sure that they know that it's law enforcement coming into their residence, to try to alleviate any type of safety concerns for the owners of the residence and law enforcement themselves as well. So they did knock and announce.
No one's there?
No one was there.
Okay. So then you were able to gain access by the courtesy officer, so you didn't have to make forcible entry?
Correct.
Okay. When you make entry into a residence such as this with a valid search warrant, what are the order of events, if you could describe them to the jury?
Typical process is first is to make the apartment safe for the search warrant. So upon entry is to make sure that no other parties are inside the residence, which gives us the ability to, one, main reason is we're there is we're looking for Jasmine Pace. We're also potentially trying to locate Jason Chen to potentially interview him, see if he has any knowledge of where Jasmine Pace is at. The other part, not only is looking for them, is to make sure no one else is inside that apartment, to potentially remove them so we can do our job in terms of investigating that apartment, potentially trying to locate or collect evidence, and attempt to make observations. So the first thing is to remove any parties outside of the apartment, to then start processing or start documenting and processing that location. So at first we would either send, it's a very tough question to ask based on the circumstances, circumstantial or different circumstances on who goes inside the apartment to make it, or a residence or whatever it may be to make it safe. If we have a visual inside the entire apartment, then it may just be 1 or 2 investigators that show up. But in this specific case, we had patrol officers and homicide investigators that were present. We entered there, made it secure. We requested that all patrol officers to not re-enter that apartment. At that point, we're waiting on our crimes unit to respond to document and collect evidence. After it's deemed safe, the lead investigator and potentially an assisting investigator with the investigation will then conduct a walkthrough of that scene to potentially see items that stand out as potential evidence or things that seem suspicious for 2 different manners. One is to make sure that we don't attempt to further alter or change the scene, to make sure that, as soon as you walk in, you're not walking into a puddle of blood. Or sometimes in some investigations that we have too, there's potentially a deceased person just on the other side of that door. We don't want any further contaminants or anything altered. And also we're able to make observations that we can pass to the crime scene investigators about what we want collected and documented.
The jury is going to see in a moment and later this week lots of pictures of Mr. Chen's apartment, Investigator Crawford. They're going to see some pictures where items, one photo of a certain area where it looks different than it does in another photo. Can you explain to them how the photographing and processing of a crime scene works?
Yes. The first stage is the photographing a crime scene location or a potential search warrant, whatever it may be. The first set of photographs for documentation purposes is to take general photos of the apartment, potential items of evidence, or things that stick out, or whatever's part of the search warrant that we're executing. They will take photographs of those things. They will then follow those photographs up with a secondary set of photographs with evidence markers. Once they've documented it with photographs and video, they will go back through and place evidence markers on different pieces of evidence. And at that point, they will then take a second photograph of that, specifically focusing in on whatever that piece of evidence or something that sticks out. We're documenting those specific things with evidence markers, and potentially getting closer up shots. After that, there will be a collection phase. They will document it with evidence markers, close-ups, multi-different angles potentially of those, with the camera. After those items of evidence are collected, or whatever the photograph is taken, those other items are then collected by the crime scene unit where they're documented and placed into bags of evidence at that point. Then we conduct another set of photographs to show the condition of which, once we finish the search, what the residence, apartment, whatever it may be, is left in to document our entire process. There is the possibility that that process continues, where you potentially you do a search at first, items of evidence are collected. Like I said, they'll do the first 2 phases of documentation photographs based on potentially what items of evidence are seen or observed. We always attempt to do a second walk-through search of the apartment to make sure we didn't miss anything else. So that process could start again with another set of photos of a potentially different set of items that maybe you didn't see an evidence marker there before, but there's an evidence marker there now. So sometimes there's the same angle and it appears that something's been moved. If you were to observe all the photographs chronologically, obviously it would make the most sense. But obviously there's potential, depending on what angle of the photo is, you may see a photograph of a notebook in a certain place, and then it shows a different angle of the same one, and the notebook's not there, it's potentially been removed as evidence in the case.
Okay, all right, thank you. That was helpful. So if we're talking about a crime scene and you've come in after a search warrant's executed, and you see this lying on a table, for example, and you can see I've got a piece of paper over a pen. Crime scene may take a photo of this, is that correct?
That's correct.
But then crime scene might remove this and take a photo of this, is that correct?
Correct.
And then crime scene might remove both of these, collect them as evidence, and take a picture of that, is that correct?
That's correct.
When you entered into Jason Chen's apartment, did you have any idea what happened to Jasmine Pace? You didn't know. You didn't know where she was.
No, I didn't notice where she was.
And other than the information that you used to obtain the search warrant, you didn't know what happened?
Correct.
Okay. And the witness, a lot of pictures, I'll try to tell what many there are.
You know, if you can do a batch of pictures, it's fine, just hand them to Lynn, let her mark them, and you can get into the direct testimony.
Should be 57 on there. Yes, Your Honor, if my math is correct.
It'll be 25 through 81.
Investigator
If my
Crawford?
math's correct.
Yeah. We'll go back to mine and see if we're right there. I'll ask you to just take a second and look through these photographs. Investigator Crawford, do you recognize those photos?
I do.
What are they?
The photographs inside apartment 210 at 110 Tremont Street.
Is that Jason Chen's apartment?
That's correct.
Do you recognize those photos as photos that were taken at the time the search warrant was executed on November 28th, 2022?
That's correct.
Do they accurately represent what Mr. Chen's apartment looked like in November of 2022?
That's correct.
And were you present when most, if not all, of those photos were taken?
I believe so.
Your Honor, I'd ask that these photos become State's Exhibits 25 through 80.
25 for 81.
And I know this is going to take
That's
the
okay.
court reporter a second. I apologize.
Step up and
Judge.
stretch. Take your time.
What? I have to call.
I'm at the court reporter in Nashville. This is Lynn. She's our court reporter. Division 3. This is Lawan. She's the clerk. She's kind of the Felix is the air traffic controller for the jury trial courtroom. Lawan is the air traffic controller for all the cases. So you see lawyers talking to her throughout the panels. Every now and then we got students come visit. We got one here from ETSU visiting with us, criminal justice major. Interested in crime and law. Makes some significant now. That's our team. Randy Biggs is also part of the team. Good to see you around the line. Or clerks. Her nickname is Ruckus. Usually when she shows up in court, something bad is going to happen or about to happen. Some type of ruckus. How's everybody doing the jury box, by the way? We've got a couple of extra chairs there we don't usually have. You guys on the end doing okay? Okay. I know your chair's a little close to the edge there, so be careful. Don't want to roll off. 6 times.
I counted incorrectly, Your Honor.
20 copies, 58 pictures, 20 copies, 82. 20 copies, 82.
All right. If you'll turn around to the screen behind you. The jury's actually already seen this picture, but this is a duplicate, which is State's Exhibit 26. What is that?
It's a photograph of the front door of apartment 210 at 110 Tremont Street.
All right, Investigator Crawford. You begin a search like this with just a naked eye search. Is that fair to say?
Gloves and a flashlight.
And in a case such as this, is blood one of the things with your naked eye that you'd be looking for?
Be one of the things.
Upon the initial entrance into Mr. Chen's apartment, did anyone with a naked eye locate any blood?
I did.
Just with no specificity around what areas?
The first observance that I observed was in the living room area of the apartment, specifically behind the futon-style couch that was there on the floor. It was the first area that I observed.
What is Blue Star?
Blue Star reagent is a chemical that is used in the detection of blood. Specifically, it's used to detect the presence of blood that's not visible to the naked eye. Essentially, shows when it reacts. Blue Star reacts to blood. It shows the presence of blood if it was cleaned up, or cleaned or wiped, or might.
And can you explain to the jury how Blue Star actually works when an investigator comes in?
In simple terms, they mix the chemical solution and they spray it upon surfaces with a spray bottle. At which point, if there is something such as there's blood, you will see a chemical reaction that occurs through a process called luminescence. Essentially, you'll see a bright blue or potentially white coloration that comes up similar to neon coloration.
And if it illuminates in that bright blue or white, does that indicate the presence of blood?
Yes, it can.
In this case, was Blue Star employed soon after entry was made into the apartment?
Blue Star wasn't applied at first. We first had to document the scene. Specifically, if there was large areas of blood, there would be no need to spray it with Blue Star. There would be potentially just swabs of where that are samples taken. So first you have to potentially document the scene in multiple avenues, potentially look for areas of services that you would be interested in to see if blood had been cleaned up in that area.
But did you do that in this case?
We did.
When you do that, are the lights supposed to be off?
Correct.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, I'm going to introduce these photos. They are going to be on the big screen. However, the state has purchased this TV because it's hard to see on the screen. Some of the colors are not correct. Within the court's comfortability and the jury's, I like the lights to be turned off in the courtroom.
Turn them off.
Yes, Your Honor.
See how dark that gets. Like that, General, that work for you?
If that's what the court's comfortable with.
Turn them off. Is that, that's far as that's.
Okay, all right, can't get any more off, all right. So again, Investigator Crawford, I will have them on this back screen, the next photos I'm going to show, but I'm also going to have them here. And would the court allow the jury to stand up if they can't view this TV well enough?
Absolutely. Yeah. Any juror can't see the evidence that someone wants to refer to, or any attorney, raise your hand and be sure you stand up and move around if you need to within the 3 months.
Investigator Crawford, do you recall who employed Blue Star at the apartment that day?
I do.
Who was it?
It's Investigator Johnson with our crime team.
And you were present for that?
I was.
On the large screen and on this screen is State's Exhibit 25. Investigator Crawford, was that represent to you? Paul, it's gone.
Jennifer, moving the TV closer to the jury will help. Feel free to do that. I can watch it on the big screen.
Okay. Of course. We just wanted you to see for a minute. Second. Flash. All right. Investigator Crawford, did this indicate to investigators that there is a possible presence of blood in what are the blue areas?
Correct.
State's Exhibit 27. Again, another photo that shows blue star reaction.
That's correct.
State's Exhibit 28. More blue star reaction. You can actually see it up there better than you can in this photo. State's Exhibit 29. What? 29. State's Exhibit 29. Oh, I haven't been reading it on my computer. I'm sorry, that's my fault. This is State's Exhibit 29 on both TVs. The blue spots indicative of blood.
Shows a positive reaction.
State's Exhibit 30. Where in Mr. Chen's apartment are we standing at this point, Investigator Crawford?
Currently, this photograph is taken from the perspective inside of the single bedroom. It's actually pointing down through what appears to be a hallway. It's actually, what you see is that the lighter colored area at the bottom of the photograph is going to be a carpeted area. You see a door frame. Just past that is a tiled area. It's going to be a small bathroom on the left-hand side. Essentially, you have a shower. On the right-hand side, you have a toilet, sink, and mirror. Directly through that goes into the living room and kitchen area back towards the front door of the residence.
And on the television screen, if General Moyle has, you'll have to look here because you can't see it up there because the lighting's not good. There's a piece of carpet missing.
That's correct.
Who did that?
Crime scene.
Collected that piece of carpet as evidence?
Yes, it did.
Okay. State's Exhibit 31. Again, same view, just different lighting.
That's
In
correct.
Mr. Chen's bedroom.
That's correct.
So what you can see in this right-hand side over here, is that Mr. Chen's bed?
Yes.
State's Exhibit 32. What is this object?
That's going to be on the back side of the front door of the residence.
Right when you walk in?
That's correct. As soon as you walk in.
State's Exhibit 33. Another angle, same doorway.
That's correct.
This shows State's Exhibit 34. This shows a little bit of a different angle. Again, you can now see this, the removal of this carpet was done by the crime scene unit.
Yes, that's correct.
For what purposes would that have been?
During the initial walkthrough and documentation of the scene, we observed a dark reddish brown discoloration on the carpet that was consistent with blood. They collected that carpeted sample at that time prior to Blue Star being administered. They wouldn't let Blue Star administered potentially saturate that blood or potentially do anything to it at that time.
Okay, and then lastly, State's Exhibit 35.
That's going to be a photograph of the bathroom sink inside of that small bathroom area. You can see, if you might have a laser pointer.
Say that again?
Laser
Oh,
pointer.
no, sure.
Since this one is, there's multiple areas of, do you mind if I approach the screen?
No, go ahead. If the board doesn't mind.
Please step down. Be sure to speak up, investigator, so the jury can hear you, and the court can hear you.
Yes. Sorry, the laser light was connected with the TV. Inside this photograph, you will see a picture of, like I said, the bathroom sink inside of the single bathroom inside of the apartment. On the photograph, it may be hard to tell from where you're sitting, but there's multiple areas where you see a positive Blue Star reaction. You can see this bright colored area here. Since we're in, if you back out on the sink itself, you can see the reaction on top of the sink, and here it appears to be shading product right there. If you look down in the sink, you can actually see what appears to be a positive reaction inside the sink and went down towards the drain.
Thank you, Investigator Crawford. Your Honor, the lights can be turned back on. It's now the condition of the screen. Investigator Crawford, you mentioned, talking about that carpet, you mentioned discoloration. Were there multiple spots of discoloration on the carpet that you could see with the naked eye?
Yes.
And in your experience as a homicide prosecutor, what did the discoloration appear to be?
Investigator.
What did I say?
Prosecutor.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, you are not a prosecutor. As an investigator, in your years of experience, what did that discoloration appear to be?
Blood.
So is that one way, the discoloration on the carpet, is that one way the crime scene would have known what areas of carpet to collect?
Correct. Obviously, the discoloration, the reddish brown color, depending on the different stages, and how fresh it is, how old it is. If it had been attempted being cleaned up, any areas that had been presumed full of blood were attempted to be collected at that time.
You saw in a lot of those photos there was yellow markers and yellow tape. Who did that?
Or crime scene.
Is that how they evidence what they have collected and what stands out to them as possible evidence in the case?
Whether it was their observation or an investigator's observation, such as myself asking certain items to be documented and collected, they use the yellow evidence markers to document those during photographs.
When would you say that this investigation became a homicide investigation?
Upon first spray of the Blue Star reagent, I was actually standing in the kitchen area. Upon the first administration of the Blue Star reagent, upon first spray, it illuminated an extremely large area inside the living room area. The most I'd seen at that point in my homicide career. And seen that intense and that wide of an area in terms of a reaction to Blue Star.
All right, we're going to go through some other photos. I'll try to go as quickly as possible. They'll all be behind you from this point forward. Investigator Crawford. All right, so again, just orient on State's Exhibit 36, just orient the jury.
This is going to be a photograph documenting the front doorway, specifically the where the locking mechanism goes into the door. We document every time we enter in to document if there's signs of forced entry. Standard practice to document them.
Upon entry into the apartment, did you smell any odors of marijuana?
No.
In your experience, both in patrol and as an investigator, have you had the chance to smell marijuana?
Yes, I am.
in raw form
Yes,
and in smoked form?
yes.
And, did you smell it in this apartment in any form?
No.
State's Exhibit 37 is just a photo of the door. Did you witness any forced entry, signs of forced entry on the door, or the photo number 36 or 37?
No, not your typical signs of forced entry. There's scratches on the door frame, but they're not truly indicative of forced entry.
Are we, this State's Exhibit 38, are we looking in from the front door?
That's correct. This is the point of view as you enter through the front door of the apartment. Once again, it's been described as a shotgun-style apartment. It's not, it's more long than it is wide. Essentially, you can see the 3 or 4 separate rooms, however you want to describe it. The living room, the kitchen, the bathroom, and then the entry into the back bedroom. This is taken from approximately the same location in just a slightly different angle. Nothing starts to capture the right side of the apartment or the west side of the apartment.
And that's photo 39. This is State's Exhibit 40. Again, now we're just panning over to the right. You'll see that desk chair. What's in front of that desk chair that you can't see in this photo?
Just this side of it?
Yes, sir.
It would be the
Yes,
desk.
chair.